Okay, so I've been sick. I'm back. Today we're going to talk about enclosures. Oh, yeah, and I have a new setup with the camera there and whatever. Let's see what you think about it. Now, an enclosure is a way of leading a line to a chord tone and actually surrounding the target tone to emphasize it. Now, for practical purposes here, we're talking about a single dimension. It's left or right, or above and below in terms of the keyboard. This would mean an enclosure would only need two walls, so to speak. One wall above the target note and one wall below the target note. Now, when I was just learning this style, I would run up against an uncomfortable thought, and that thought was, why are my solos sounding so uninteresting? And then it dawned on me that I was not including enough of the special sauce. So a few things about enclosures, and then I'll demonstrate. The target notes are tones of the chord that is being changed to. So if I'm going here for the major third of the B flat 7 chord, and that would be a D, then I might play these two notes, E flat and C sharp. Remember, the stable notes, in other words, the root and the fifth, add stability, but the active tones, the thirds and the sevenths, instigate movement. An enclosure is no less than two accessory tones. Remember that you need the two walls in one dimension to be enclosed, but it can be more. Half steps and whole steps can be used either by combining them or using one or the other. Now, let's try this using our old friends of F7, B flat 7, and C7 in the key of an F blues. We'll start with the third, which is lane 2, by the way. Check out this video for more on that. Here are the three chords to get them into our ear. To lead to the third of F7, I'm going to play B flat, G sharp, A. Note A as the major third of F7 is the target, and the enclosure is created by the B flat and G sharp. Right? When the song makes its move to the second chord, the B flat 7, we're going to do an enclosure to the major third of that chord, which is a D. So we'll use E flat, C sharp, D. Now, let's do the same enclosure for C. E is the major third of C, so we're going to do F, D sharp to E. Like that. Now, if you're asking why is it spelled D sharp and not E flat, it's because sharps go up and flats go down. Thus, D sharp leads to E, and E flat leads down to D. The notation follows the function of the notes. On the other hand, if you look at the music theory group on Facebook, you'll see there's a lot of discussion and arguments about this. So I don't want to get into it. You do you. I know great musicians whose music, printed music, to me is unreadable because they don't follow those rules. So, I can't play with them because I just have this mind that thinks about functional harmony and everything. Just a quick thought before I get into another lane. Now, the trick we're using is that these videos that we've been doing recently have been about what to play, but maybe it's even more about how to practice. So I came to the piano late in life compared to other players. I was a guitar player since I was 8, but I was inspired by this amazing mentor I had in college. I was really driven, and so I practiced with this level of self-abuse that was just unsustainable. One Saturday night, when any normal college student would have been partying, I was holed up in my apartment practicing, and I missed some notes in a passage a few times. And suddenly I went crazy. I started pounding the piano, the keys, just like in anger to myself, and I was shouting obscenities. And then, in this moment of clarity, it was sort of like I was watching this scene take place. And not only was it not pretty, but it was not efficient. So I started approaching my practice like a meditator instead of a nutcase. Give that some thought, because it makes a big difference in how quickly you can improve. They have a saying in the military: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. What this means is if you rush, if you make mistakes, you learn those mistakes. So let's not rush. Now let's look at the enclosures around the flat sevens. The first is the F7, so that's going to be E, D, E flat. B flat is A, G, A flat. C7 is B, A, B flat. So with each of these, the target note is the flat 7, and the enclosures are the notes a half step above or below the target. So going through the whole form, you get something like this. Like that. Now as we go through the form, let's switch from one lane to another. So I'm going to do the major third as the target note of F7, and for B flat 7 and C7, I'll do the flat 7 as a target. And so that puts them all right in the same spot. Third of F, flat 7 of B flat 7, flat 7 of C7. Here we go. So you probably knew it was coming if you watched the video I mentioned a second ago about lanes. The notes get very contiguous, right? They're all in that area. When you change from a chord that's a leap away, or from or to the F7, for example, the notes are all in a very restricted area. Also, taking these three chords, notice that every single note in the range from G to B is a possible candidate for one or more of those chords. So extrapolating this concept to all the chord tones opens up every single pitch on the instrument to your use. As Longo used to say to me, there are no wrong notes, only wrong directions. Now let's switch that. We'll use the flat 7 for the target note of F7 and the major third as the target note on B flat 7 and on C7. Now notice, the whole time we've been going from the upper to the lower in all the previous examples. In other words, from the upper enclosure to the lower enclosure and then to the target note. Let's try and going from the lower enclosure to the upper enclosure. So that means F7 on the third, lower to higher, G sharp, B flat, A. B flat on the third, lower to higher enclosure, is C sharp, E flat, D. C7 on the third, lower to higher enclosure, is D sharp, F, E natural, like that. So if you go around the form, it's going to be like this. Same thing on the sevenths. First, F7, lower to higher enclosure, is D, E, E flat. B flat 7, lower to higher enclosure, is going to be G, A flat. And C7, lower to higher enclosure, is going to be A, B, B flat. So if we go through that whole thing, this is what we end up with. And then if we just move on to C, like that. Also, a couple of other things I want to mention. There can be some whole steps in there as well. For example, on an F7 where the target note is a major third or A. So instead of doing G sharp, B flat, A, I'm going to do G, B flat, A. It's actually a little more diatonic. Like that. So in this case, it's lower to upper enclosure, coming from a whole step below to a half step above, and then to the target note, using the same formula. B flat becomes C, E flat, D, as I just demonstrated. C7 becomes D, F, E natural. Or reverse it. Whole step on top, half step below, with the pattern of the lower enclosure, upper enclosure, target note. So that would be this. In this last example, by the way, it produces an augmented 11th sound. It's a really cool sound, but if it doesn't fit your aesthetic, don't use it. A big part of this, trying things out, is learning what you like and doing that in your music. And some of it boils down to style. Or you could use whole steps on both sides. This time from above, below, and then target. That's out there, man. That's out there. So you have a lot to practice. You have first lower, upper to the target. Then you have upper, lower to the target. Second, you have mixing up the second and fourth lanes together. So, for example, the target note would be major third in one of the chords, and then the two closer ones, the target note might be the flat seventh, or you reverse that. Third, use various half-step and whole-step variations. Also, don't forget to do the first and third lanes. They start on the stable tones, but they're also gussied up pretty well by this approach. So let's say we're going to do the roots of all of them. Or let's say we're going to do the fifths of them. And you can do groupings with more notes. For example, on F7, try B, G, B flat, G sharp, A. B flat, try E, C, E flat, C sharp, D. C7, F sharp, D, F natural, D sharp, E. Then back to B flat 7, E, C, E flat, C sharp, D. And for F, B, G, B flat, G sharp, A. And then so you could call this thing the walls closing in enclosure. From further to closer to the target note. So now you have two choices. You can either binge or you can shut this off and practice. Calm, non-judgmental practice. Leave the cat videos for later.